Will you get another 4 years and then a student discount whilst you're a student? Okay, here we go. Thank you. So, some of you may have actually thought about this very important question. See, I had a reminder to myself, take a while. Who are we and why are we here? I think in the profession of teaching, you're dealing with that all the time. What is the point? What is the purpose? And your students will harass you about that. They want to know why they're sitting in your seat in your classroom and what's, oh, thank you, and what's in it for them. So I have very much enjoyed some of the Edmodo comments so far. It does give me an insight into you as individuals and where you're coming from, and I can see that some of you are incredibly busy. Please engage with Edmodo. I know you probably think it's another hassle or thing that you have to do, but it does actually get you practice your burst in a way of working that I think your students will really appreciate. A lot of schools won't let you use Facebook, and Edmodo is the next best thing. All right, so here, I wanted to start with a map. I'm going to hold it up, because to me it's a very important part of the English classroom. Just walk around, just have a look at it. What do you notice about it? Now, I was walking through Darling Harbour in Sydney and I saw that in the window and I stopped and I walked back.
Yeah.
Why would someone go to all the trouble and the hassle of creating something, because that's quite an expensive item to produce, for something like that?
I don't know. The UN flag has the map of the world on it upside down as well, so maybe there's some relevance to that.
Yeah. What else? It actually tripped me up. I was like, wow, that's so cool.
The way that we perceive the world is not exactly fact, like it can be upside down, but we always perceive it to be the other way around.
So why do we do that?
Challenge our perceptions.
Yeah, that's right. I had never thought of the map in that way before, and it really did destabilise my perception of my reality, and that's what the English syllabus that we're going to be looking at is all about. How do we perceive the world, and should we be challenging those perceptions? Funny the things we just take for granted and not question. And it's our world, you know. Why should Australians always down the bottom? It's worth thinking about. But again, it's the power of language, and if you have a look at some of my Edmodo comments, that came up. Students were voluntarily talking about English from that perspective that language is power, language is political. Absolutely, totally, fundamentally. In fact, some people would say that the only purpose to communication is to position another person in some way. That's a very cynical view of the subject, but again, worth thinking about it. So, very, very quickly, this is an activity I used to do with my students all the way from year 8 to year 12. A bit of copies of my computer actually. Oh, that's a shame. I'll put it on Edmodo for you to listen to. It's a really lovely YouTube clip that's very old, so the sound isn't so great, but it's done to a song that you would know as well. And it's about literacy and how it changes lives. And what I do is I play that to my students at the start of the year generally, and then I ask them a question. These were Year 11 student responses. So why does learning English matter? Why do they spend so much time in that seat, in that classroom with you? And that year I just happened to just type them all out. Year 8 students can be surprisingly insightful and valued in a way that you wouldn't necessarily expect. I mean, you can see that some of them are just about the basic aspects of life, being able to communicate, being able to read forms, being able to engage in transactions. This student is starting to make connections between every subject that they're working with, entertaining others, subtleties in text that only those with the same education can pick up. I guess that refers back to the maps. It had meaning to me from the moment my eyes first laid eyes on it, for someone else maybe not quite so much. This is very deep, to have a sense of acceptance, to be a socially adjusted contributing member of society, to have a social life. You'll find yourself defending your subject from time to time and engaging in interesting debates with colleagues about which subjects are most important, and I win that debate every time. I just don't think you can underestimate its power, using improvisation skills and so on. And I would also argue that you would find these matters from the hearts and the minds of Year 11 students in the objectives. And we're going to analyse those objectives to depth. Which makes the living, breathing document. No one likes to read a syllabus. I've already been told it's lots of pages in it and it's really dry, and it really seriously is. But it is a very important framework. And I'll just let you scan a few of those as well. Read books and learn from them. Allow us to make informed decisions. Communicating this idea, a fundamental skill of life. And I haven't actually indoctrinated them in any way. I haven't, apart from show them that particular clip. And my challenge is that if you can just keep these in mind as we dive into the syllabus objectives, and to do a check against them when you do, how will you convince your students that the time spent in your class is lifelong learning? So, the structure, pre-workshop activities, there will always be some. Here we are, and post-workshop activities. I am really interested in your ideas about how we work with the prescribed text list in this unit. In my last unit, I asked students, we had a poll on Edmodo, and students would nominate a particular text from the prescribed text list, and we would vote on it, and then during the week I would organise resources and activities, and we would learn about the English syllabus through the lens of that prescribed text. This unit's structured a little bit differently than that. That makes it a bit more awkward, but that's where Edmodo might be a good platform for us to use. So if you wouldn't mind just, thinking about that in the background, because it's good to go into school knowing some of these texts. Not all the texts, I haven't read all the texts. But if you've got any ideas, I'm really keen to hear them. You've got favourites or ones that you hate. Sometimes the ones you hate or despise the most are the ones that are really valuable in terms of deconstructing and unpacking, like Heart of Darkness, which is on the literature prescribed text list. The students couldn't stand it, but when we started drilling into it and breaking it apart, these little epiphanies started happening. So goals. Understand requirements for your assessment, understand the senior English syllabuses, and there are quite a few. Are you all aware of how many syllabuses there are in the English suite? Any idea how many there might be?
There's a few, I'm thinking of them now.
And your brain's probably going, how do I make sense of all this? Well, I'm going to help.
Which one do I click on?
Well, our main focus is English,
Okay.
but essential English is so important.
Yeah.
A lot of new teachers teach essential English, and that's
Yeah.
one of the syllabuses that I'm in charge of. And probably around the state, English and essential English are the most used syllabuses in the suite. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're the ones that make sense for us to really dig into. Australian curriculum underpins them. This is important, and you'll continue that throughout the unit. Teaching frameworks, in terms of how you teach, all those key ideas, and there are lots of others as well. So, I'd really love to see you every week. That way we can establish a relationship and interconnect, ask questions on the fly as they occur to us. Alright, so assessment 1, the rationale scenario, 50%. So what you're going to do is you're going to write an email to a parent care about a child's marking assessment instrument. We actually do this quite a lot out there in schools. I used to actually try and call parents rather than send a lot of emails, because you can get into whatever you put in writing can be used for you or against you. So you've just got to be very careful about the vocabulary you use and your choice of language, which funnily enough is one of our objectives, choice of language choices. And being very mindful of your audience, which funnily enough is in our objectives as well. And part B is this, so part A is a reply to parent. Yeah. Very real world. Part B, academic rationale to head of teaching and learning, justifying your response to the parent about the assessment, feedback and quality assurance processes that underpin that. And that's where we're talking about endorsement and confirmation and your internal moderation, which all schools, I would have to honestly say, have really worked hard on over the last couple of years. In the old system, you could probably, their internal moderation existed, but it's really started to become a formal part of the way schools operate, and it's called a community of practice, which is why face-to-face interaction in a unit is really good training for when you go out there into school land, because the days of working on your own really have vanished. Okay, so assessment 2, the video demonstrating the process of marking internal moderation. Internal students, external students. If you can organise your groups as soon as possible, that would be a really good idea. And everyone needs to organise a conversation with the teacher to discuss the internal moderation processes. When you're out on crack, have a think about that. I would be very surprised if anyone went out and did crack experience today without a conversation, just that grows organically out of your work with students today, because it's on teachers' minds. I need my assessment instrument endorsed. QCAA haven't endorsed it. What's wrong? What have I done wrong? Where is my learning? Where are the gaps? You know, I say to teachers all the time, there's no shame in not getting your assessment instrument endorsed, because we're all on a learning journey. And there are some schools who'll say to their teachers, just expect your first application of your assessment instrument to not get endorsed. Who knows what I'm talking about when I say endorsement? Yeah, some do, some don't, but you will. And this last month we've been doing confirmation training, so it's really, really heating up. And like I said, there's some trepidation. So internal moderation processes, these things protect you as teachers, and that's why there's such a strong emphasis on them, and that's why it's part of your assessment for this unit. The better you are at internally moderating, the more likely your assessment instruments will be endorsed, and the more likely your marking will be reliable, because you've bounced ideas around and you've had some rigorous conversations and you've reached a shared understanding of what discerning means. That's one of our qualifiers in our syllabus. If you're going to be awarding a student a tick for discerning, you need to know what that looks like, sounds like, feels like in your student's work that's in front of you. And I have heard some very intense, passionate, angry conversations between teachers about disputes on marks in terms of student work. But that's just part of the process. Eventually you work it through and you come to a place where you can see the evidence in the student response. Everything is evidence-based in the new system. That's a word we tend to use a lot. So this is really assessing your knowledge of the syllabus and how to satisfy its requirements in the marking of student work, which is a challenging task, but it's invaluable, valuable learning. I'll let you read this quote. Which I guess is why I had that Edmodo activity. Sometimes articulating these things brings things to light that we may not have otherwise really considered. And that's why those internal moderation processes, which I probably should define for you, it's when a group of people get together and they talk about stuff. That's what it is. I think this student is 25 out of 25. No, I don't. Well, why? Because look, it's amazing. Well, no, actually it's not amazing. There's all this stuff missing. Where's the analysis about concepts? One teacher might say, have a look at this assessment instrument. It is perfect. It's going to be great. And then the other teacher might say, gee, I think you really missed. I'm not quite sure what you mean in this sentence here. So, knowing yourself and knowing your strengths and your default patterns is also really important when you're writing assessment instrument or when you're marking student work. Because we tend to fixate on some things. There are some grammar Nazis out there and they really fixate on that part of the student response. But there are another 8 objectives that we're awarding credit for. So, I'm not going to, I'm sure you're very fast readers. This is our focus. That's our focus. I'll give you a moment to read that. So we have a really strong focus in this unit on internal moderation processes and marking student work and defending our decisions as practitioners. What are your defaults? I know that I'm one of those spelling and grammar people. I am. But I know that, and because I know that, I can moderate or regulate myself not to fixate on some things. I can still mark that, then I can put it aside and then look at the ideas. But some teachers can't do that. They fixate on one aspect, let's say grammar, spelling and punctuation, and then they can't see the really strong shaping of a perspective or the ideas. So if you're aware of yourself, that awareness is really important. Sometimes teachers aren't quite flexible enough either, they're rigid, which is where some of those conversations about marking student work can be quite difficult. Here's another one. Any comments about the last couple of quotes?
The correction of the grammar and language I thought rang. I've got an 8-year-old, not quite 8-year-old son that rang, and I correct him every time I hear him say it. And it's something that grates on me when I hear things like that. It's I suppose when you're marking student work, it's akin to walking somewhere with a piece of grunt like a grain of sand in your shoe. You know it's there, it's irritating, but you just got to keep your boot on and walk and let that irritation just fade away and get on with it, sort of thing.
You can provide support.
Yeah.
And it's actually important to know what the students' strengths are in your class and what their weaknesses are so you can address them. So you can go in there and say, okay, I marked all these students' responses, 25 of them on the weekend. Oh, not one of them got the possessive apostrophe in the right place. I'm going in now, I'm going to hammer possessive apostrophes for the next 3 days. So from that point of view, it's really important. But sometimes,
I suppose you have to remember too is that as important as those things are, they're only a small part of it.
Do you know how many objectives we have?
Yeah, and if you can sort of maybe try and incorporate it in a sneaky sort of way whilst you're teaching other things, that's
Well,
one way of doing it.
That's an interesting suggestion, and that's
So-
grounded by research.
Yeah, sort of subliminally almost, I suppose.
That's what we call teaching grammar in context.
Yeah.
So if you're teaching a text, if you're teaching Charles Dickens, instead of getting students to do an activity on possessive apostrophes that's about something completely irrelevant and nonsense, you can actually get maybe a section of Charles Dickens' book, take all the possessive apostrophes out, give it to students and get them to actually put the correct apostrophes in. And when you're doing that, you're actually building content knowledge as well as their skill level. And you do lots of activities like that to upskill them. Anyone else? Any comments? This is where you get up out of your seat. Value continuum is an awesome activity for students in class. I used it a lot. Now you can use it in multiple ways. You can shine it onto a whiteboard, which obviously I can't do here, and give whiteboard markers to students and get them to come and actually mark on the value continuum where they sit, where they feel, where they're at. We've got a whopping table in the way. But anyway, I can't control the room because there's someone in it before me. So can I get all of you to get up out of your seats? We have a value continuum across the room. Do you agree or disagree with this statement? There's no right or wrong, it's just a personal position. Just form a line in front of it. Oh, that's interesting. Don't feel swayed by the rest of the group's decision. You can be bold and actually that means a lot of you quite strongly agree with that statement, which I find really interesting. What about the next one? You can move. Okay, very interesting. There's been a little bit of movement. Tell me why some of you moved.
So, just to clarify, are we thinking of the line as in front of the board or as the whole way across the room?
This way. So that's agree?
Yeah.
This is disagree.
Yes, but am I in the middle thinking I'm on halfway between agree or
Yes,
disagree because
yes.
I'm between the two walls?
Yes.
Rather than
Oh,
just in
okay.
front of the line. Because I think,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I see.
Because I'm
Okay, so
not
that's
just,
the middle.
not just the line, it's the whole
The
room.
walls that are down there.
Yeah,
the whole
because I think,
room. Yeah, that's just a guide us.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, now we're getting it.
Yeah.
We're all in such a
Yeah.
slump. Everybody like-minded. Okay, so there was a bit of movement there though, wasn't there? So a little bit more individualism when it comes to this one. Can someone just tell me why? Yep.
I just think that we can communicate in ways other than English. So I don't think that speaking English is like, yes, it's part of our identity, but there's other things that form our identity.
Yeah, like what?
I don't know, just
Ways
as
of
part of
feeling.
yeah, ways of feeling, ways of communicating through physicality. Obviously, like cultural differences do have English associated with it, but
And maybe we don't always think in terms of language.
yeah.
Maybe that's what you're trying to say. Do you have something to add to that?
I was just going to say that so often I think people even struggle to verbalize parts of themselves. So, you know, it's like you're not quite sure why you think a certain way or why you are the way you are. And so it's just how you've always been, and to try and verbalize it can be quite difficult. And I'm just particularly thinking like a psychological kind of way. So that's why other therapies go beyond just talking therapy. So there's like art therapy, music therapy, because when it becomes difficult to verbalize, you can use other ways because sometimes you just don't know.
Because it's still who you are.
Yeah, it's all who you are, but you don't have, you can't explain why in like verbal terms.
Yeah. And when I say language there, it's not just English.
Yeah, I realized that. I just looked and I was like, wait a second.
That's fine.
Even with any language, it's kind of hard to say if a
deconstruction of reality or identity.
Yeah.
That's kind of a very large leap to make.
That is really important because you're going to have a lot of students with a very disparate understanding and use of language, and it doesn't mean they're not highly thinking, well,
Or don't know themselves. Or
know themselves.
Yeah.
And maybe, I don't know how you feel about that, but for me as an English teacher, I feel that it's part of my duty to help them be able to articulate, so that other people around them understand, whether it's through dance or, to me, that's the art of communication. We just focus on words in the English syllabus, although we do bring in visual literacy as well. It's just not as strong as a focus on words. And yeah, there are some students who can't write a sentence, but they're deep thinkers, like really deep, and you're just blown away by some of the things that come out of their mouths. And we shouldn't be blown away. You know? Anyone else in response to that statement? Yep, there you go.
I was just gonna say, for anyone from like a creative industries background, I know that we see a lot of kids portraying their own identity and what they think of reality through physicality, like, you know, physical theatre and because there's heaps of different types of theatre that you can use to portray how you're feeling or a certain aspect of something through things that aren't language.
And do you know that you're going to become really good at that? If you can make a concerted effort to make contact with every student in your class every lesson, even if it's just 1/2 a second glance, you're going to have students wanting to come to your class. That's what they'll like with my class. And if you're gazing around the room and a kid's slouched or falling asleep, and I've already seen someone look a bit sleepy today, and that's fine, I totally get it. We're adults, so it's a different group of people, and you've got very busy lives and a lot of demands on you. Mind you, some of our students come from difficult backgrounds too, so they might not be well rested either. But you become acutely conscious of body language, and when they're slouching and when they're, you know, when they're into it. And I'll never forget the lesson or those lessons when the students, when the bell finally went and it was a double lesson and the students were going, that can't be the second bell. I meant that already, you know, I had, and okay, what about this one? Do we strongly agree, disagree, or just as kind of I'm kind of relieved in a way, because that's the crux of the syllabus. It's all purpose, audience, and context. I can see some of you thinking, because that's how all of these are big statements, and I know I'm asking a lot of you to make a decision very quickly. But I am so indoctrinated. I'm so programmed that way now that I can't think any other way. You can challenge me as much as you want to, but everything, all our objectives, audience, purpose, context, and there's one more genre. Those 4 things must be in every assessment task that you ever administer to any student. Context, genre, audience, purpose, those 4 the golden rules. If you don't have one of those things, then there's something missing, something very important from the task. What about that one? Now we're approaching on the idea of culture and situation. And this is where I think we look at ads from 50 years ago and we wince. We go,
Yeah, 9 out of 10 doctors smoke Camels, you know, like, I'm pretty old.
I know,
But,
my
you
dad
know,
tells
back,
me
if you
about
put
that.
that anywhere now,
Yeah.
you know, if it was a doctor recommending that you smoke, you'd get deregistered. But back then, that was like, clears your lungs up, gives you lung
Yeah.
capacity, suck on a camel, you know, like, smoke a camel. You know?
there were some really bigoted, discriminatory ads, and really my toes curl. And it's hard to imagine that ever being okay. But it also
Wouldn't
shows,
fly now. No way.
it shows how far we have come. Maybe not across every part of society. And I suppose that's definitely part of the syllabus as well. What about this one? And there's no right or wrong. Feel free to move wherever you want to go. Yeah.
I'm kind of ambivalent about that. Yeah, it depends on your audience, I suppose. Their sort of emotional maturity, the intellectual maturity, what you're talking about, who.
of gobbledygook,
Yeah,
right?
it's kind of a, I don't know, it's almost a meaningless statement, because you always shape, I know I do, you always shape your communication to your audience, and this links quite strongly to the third one, I think.
Yeah.
Who we're talking to, how and what about, is a lot of this last one.
That word is everywhere in the English syllabus. I said everywhere, and I was talking to a teacher the other day, and she said, my students aren't going to use that word in their answers. I tell you, they just are not. I said, well, that's okay, as long as they are still talking about the representation.
And understanding what it means.
Yeah, it's a big word. Points of view, another very prevalent word in the syllabus. Cultural assumptions, values, attitudes, they are in our objectives. Cultural assumptions is probably one of the most difficult ones for students to get their heads around, and even teachers, when you talk about a cultural assumption within a text. That's heavy cognitive work. Aesthetic features, I reckon, are the backbone of our subject, metaphors, similes. And you actually have already used one. You were talking about like a grain of sand.
Yeah, exactly.
We use images in our conversation to make sense of our world and to help our audience understand us.
Yeah.
And they are the most fun, I kid you not. This is where your students need the most help probably, unpacking Charles Dickens' Heart of Darkness, really breaking it down into digestible chunks. And you need to know what they are because you're going to be marketing them. You're going to say it's either discerning, effective, suitable, or just merely identification, and same with stylistic devices. So we will unpack those words in more detail, but I think it's interesting that you all did move away because you're saying meaning is more important than the terminology.
I also have issue with the use of special in that sense. I think that you need to talk about language and you'll use all of those features, but I don't know that it's necessarily special. We all have that capacity and we use that in our regular lives ordinarily, and I don't know that, I think that the way you shape your sentences and your language for your students is going to be different. And I don't know that teachers per se have to have their own special language. And I think that if they did, then they're not doing their jobs necessarily as well as they could, because it puts them in an elite special group away from their students, and that's not going to help you connect with them.
That's true. Yeah, and that comes back to those quotes. If you don't know your students, you're not going to reach them, you're not going to connect.
I don't disagree because I'm in the middle, but I'm saying I don't agree either. It's a.
I agree with what you're saying, but could you interpret that as, say, a special language as sort of discipline-specific literacy? So,
That's not
neuro,
what it says, though, is it?
I know. Like, could you?
And I'll
could
put that
you?
out of a textbook.
Yeah, could you?
So I'm going to change that.
imply,
No, I
perhaps,
take that on.
and maths has a certain language, biology, chemistry, physics, exercise science, neurophysiology, they've all got languages and literacy which is required to understand each
That
other.
excludes
Yeah,
some people.
yeah.
I don't know that it's special.
No, well, yeah, that's right, it's not special.
Really bad adjective.
But,
Yes.
yeah, I can see you
Yeah.
could go either way with that.
Anyone else got any problems with any of that? Anything else to share? Okay, thanks everyone for participating. Now, most of you did agree, or you're either neutral or you agreed. That means philosophically you're actually aligned with the English syllabus, significantly or predominantly. And that's kind of nice for you to know at the outset. And I talked about the context, genre, audience and purpose. Now this is just a post-workshop activity that I put up there to remind you that it's there. Moving on. Well, I just gave those to you. Explicit instruction is another one that's really being emphasised around the state and around the country. Right, here we go. Let's get into the syllabus. Is plural syllabuses. All right. There were some videos on Blackboard as well. I don't know if you would have noticed them, but there were some there in the main part of Blackboard for this unit. So, how to read and interpret the suite of syllabuses. Sample assessment instrument, backward mapping, say what? Anyone not know what backward mapping means? It's okay if you don't, we're going to talk about it. Yeah, fair. Unit planning, TLAPs, anyone know what a TLAP is? That's fair too. Teaching Learning Assessment Plan, that's an acronym that QCAA uses, and you'll hear all teachers talking about it now. It's on the QCAA, they are on the QCAA website. I actually written some of those on that website. And 21st Century Skills, which is in the news almost daily. I'm interested to hear what you think of when you hear 21st Century Skills, because I'm going to tell you what the English syllabus, well, every general syllabus, actually every syllabus in Queensland has that phrase embedded within the syllabus, which puts responsibility on you as teachers and myself to make sure that we are teaching or embedding those 21st century skills in our lesson plans. We're going to have a look at the structure of the syllabuses. We're going to look at formative and summative, and we're going to look at the syllabus objectives. This is where my heart and passion lies, even though that sounds a bit strange. Before we do that though, actually, has everyone downloaded the syllabuses? If you haven't, then I have some up here. That's English, Essential English. Some of us like paper, some of us like reading on screens. We're all a little bit different when it comes to that sort of thing. What I want you to do, feel free to grab a paper copy if you want one. Open up the English one though first. Yep, come grab one, be brave.
Am I in the right spot?
Yes, you are going to English 2019. Who actually knows how to get around the QCAA website? So I'm going to give you a really quick snapshot now. Who needs a little bit of a tour around the QCAA website, like Quick Smart?
What is
As a PDF. Okay. Who wants me to give them a quick tour around the QCAA website? Who doesn't? Who does? Okay, stay behind and I'll walk you through it. A really quick way though to get any syllabus is if you open the QCAA website, in the top right hand corner there's a white box, it's a search engine. If you type in, sorry? Yeah, type what you want in there. So English syllabus or essential English syllabus or literature syllabus, and it will take you to a page where there are tabs right smack bang in the middle. Click on syllabus. It's right in the middle. I'm just going to take you to the contents page because it'll help you understand. You've got the course overview, you've got an introduction and a rationale. There's a rationale in every syllabus, and that's one of the post-workshop activities. Yep.
Which one of the four? Sorry.
I'm looking at the English one, but that's okay. Open up one of those because the contents pages are similar for the different syllabuses.
Okay.
Every one of them has a rationale, everyone has a learning area structure and a course structure. Then you've got the teaching and learning. You have the syllabus objectives, that's the syllabus objectives. Those syllabus objectives are for the entire syllabus, so they span 2 pages and they have very detailed descriptions. Why don't you just flick to those really quickly, page 4 and 5. Actually starts on page 5 in the English syllabus. And you can see that there are 11 objectives. They're in bold at the top and there's a description. We are going to labour over those. We are going to talk about them, because I can tell you now that there are teachers out there who've been teaching for 20, 30 years and they're still not entirely sure what these objectives mean. You don't want that to be you. And the best way to understand them is to talk about them. Then you've got the underpinning factors. If you go back to your contents page, you've got the Aboriginal perspectives and Torres Strait Islander perspectives. You've got a pedagogical and conceptual framework and subject matter. Subject matter is very important because that's what governs external assessment. If you want to know what's going to be in the external assessment exam, you go to the subject matter for the external exam, which is at the back of the syllabus. You'll note now that you've got Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3 and Unit 4. That's basically all you really need to know and understand for now. In each of those units, you've got a unit description, you've got unit objectives, you've got areas of study and assessment guidance. When you get to units 3 and units 4, you can see a